Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into a core idea in Buddhist practice, realization.
That's right. And our main source is a collection of talks called The Process of Realization by Ajahn Suchalo. He's a very experienced monk.
And our mission here is, well, to pull out some practical insights from his teachings, things you can maybe use in your own daily life.
Yeah, and what's interesting is where these talks come from. It's a collection gathered over 9 years.
9 years. Wow.
Yeah, and in all sorts of places, meditation retreats, pilgrimages in India, Buddhist centers in Australia, Thailand, quite diverse settings.
So grounded in real world practice.
Very much so. And the book came out in 2020, which was a big year for Ajahn Suchalo. His 24th year as a bhikkhu, a fully ordained monk,
Okay.
which was actually half his life at that point. And it was also the 10th anniversary of the Anandiri Forest Monastery he founded.
So a lot of lived experience behind these words.
Definitely. These aren't just abstract theories.
Okay, so let's get into it. What does Ajahn Suchalo actually mean by realization? It sounds pretty significant.
It is, but he explains it in a way that's, well, quite down to earth, actually. It's not about achieving some far-off mystical state only a few can reach.
Right. Less intimidating, maybe?
Exactly. He describes it more as a waking up. Waking up to a way of seeing things that's more accurate, more real.
A more real way of seeing.
And a key part is that it's about realizing a potential that's already inside us. It's like recognizing something that's already true.
Ah, okay. So not creating something new, but uncovering.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which really echoes what the Buddha himself taught.
Makes sense. And how are these talks structured? Does he cover different aspects?
Yeah, I cover a good range. Everything from the basics, daily practice, right up to more intensive stuff.
Okay.
And he talks about the Buddha's life, his key teachings. And what I found really interesting is he has multiple talks focusing on not self or anatta.
Not self. That sounds deep. What is that, briefly?
Well, essentially, it's the understanding that the things we usually identify as me or mine, our body, thoughts, feelings, they're constantly changing. They aren't some permanent, fixed self.
Okay.
And Ajahn Suchalo really stresses how crucial understanding this is. Even though it's maybe less common in Dhamma talks today, he sees it as key to, uprooting ignorance and finding real, lasting peace.
But it's not all about not self, is it? Because that could feel a bit destabilizing.
No, absolutely not. And that's the beauty of it. He creates this wonderful balance. So you have these profound wisdom teachings on not self.
Right.
But they're balanced with a strong emphasis on cultivating beautiful heart qualities. Loving kindness, compassion, that kind of thing.
Ah, the Brahma Viharas.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, look, we need to support our conventional self, our everyday experience, while we're on this path to realizing not self.
That feels really important, supporting ourselves on the journey.
It really is. It's like you need both wings, wisdom, and compassion to fly. And apparently the book itself came about because students in different countries actually requested it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they adapted the audio recordings into written form. People wanted to engage with the teachings in that way too.
That shows how much people value his guidance. So what's his hope for someone reading this or for us discussing it now?
His hope is really simple and quite touching. He just hopes that something in the collection will be helpful wherever you are in the world or, wherever you are in your own practice.
That's a lovely intention. Okay, well, let's dive into some of those key themes then. Where should we start?
How about the absolute foundation, the importance of a consistent daily meditation practice?
Sounds good. The groundwork.
Ajahn Suchalo starts with something we can all relate to, that deep, universal desire to be happy.
Yeah, everyone wants that.
Exactly. Whether you're, say, a farmer in rural Thailand dealing with weather and crops, or someone in Melbourne navigating city life and career stress, the underlying wish is the same.
Yeah.
And he says our practice isn't about eliminating struggles necessarily, but about how we relate to them as we seek that happiness.
Relating differently.
And he highlights how deep our habits run. He even suggests, they could stretch back thousands of lifetimes.
Whoa. Thousands.
Yeah, which really puts into perspective why consistent effort is needed. We're dealing with some seriously ingrained patterns, some unhelpful, some good, some just neutral.
That framing really emphasizes the long game, doesn't it? It's not a quick fix.
Definitely not. But he balances that with real confidence. Confidence in our potential for what he calls unending, unshakable, blissful peace.
Unshakable peace. That sounds amazing.
It does. And he says this potential is affirmed by those who've actually realized it. So it's not just a nice idea, it's attainable.
That's motivating.
And he reframes peace itself. He calls it a superior type of pleasure that arises when the mind isn't, constantly pulled around by greed or wanting things.
Superior pleasure.
Yeah.
Interesting. How does that work?
He talks about patiently enduring desires, just watching them, noticing their pull, but not necessarily acting.
Just watching.
Yeah. And he says when you do that, when you patiently endure, the mind can become really spacious and peaceful afterwards. It's not about getting what you want, but about the freedom from wanting.
Okay, I think I get that. A different kind of satisfaction.
Exactly. He also mentions merits the positive energy we generate in meditation. He says these merits actually support the deepening of peace and insight.
Like building up good karma.
Sort of, yeah. It's like fuel for the journey. He also talks about reframing irritation or anger.
Ah, yes. Daily life stuff.
Right. Instead of just reacting, he suggests seeing anger or aversion as calm. Just qualities arising in the mind. Not personal, not me being angry, but anger is present.
Detaching a bit.
Yes. Seeing it arise, seeing it pass away. This connects to the Buddha's core teaching. Peace is the highest happiness. Nibbana, the ultimate goal, is this unshakable peace.
So even when we're caught up in greed or confusion, that potential for peace is still our fundamental nature.
That's the idea. And ethical precepts like not harming, not stealing, they act like a container, helping us manage those turbulent energies while we cultivate that peace.
Like guardrails for the mind.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
And he mentions Ajahn Chah's advice, keep the mind in the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah, avoiding the extremes of grasping and rejecting. Coming back to the present moment, the breath, again and again. That helps us stay closer to our neutral ultimate nature.
So meditation trains that.
Exactly. Trains mindfulness, makes awareness firmer. Being aware of feelings as feelings without automatically buying into the stories they tell us.
Just feeling, not story. Got it.
And then he introduces the 5 spiritual powers. Have you heard of these?
Vaguely. Faith, energy.
That's right. Faith, energy, mindfulness, right? Collectedness or concentration and wisdom. He says these are the path to the deathless, to Nibbana.
The path itself.
Yeah. And faith is key. Faith in our own potential for liberation. He shares a story about Ajahn Anan radiating loving kindness from a liberated state out into the world element, a powerful image.
Wow. So faith fuels energy.
Which fuels mindfulness, which leads to concentration, which allows wisdom to arise, seeing things as they are, impermanent, not self.
It's a sequence.
A reinforcing cycle. But he also reminds us to be patient.
Yeah.
These unwholesome habits, greed, hatred, delusion, they're strong.
Right, the thousands of lifetimes thing.
Exactly. He talks about his own intensive practice in Bodhgaya, really pushing himself to strengthen good habits, but acknowledging full transformation might take, a very long time.
Realistic but hopeful. Okay, where next? You mentioned the breath earlier.
Yes, let's focus on that. Breathe for peace and insight. He points out something quite striking about modern life.
What's that?
How little attention we generally pay to understanding our own minds, even though the mind is how we experience literally everything.
It's true. We're very outward focused.
We are. Our mindfulness gets scattered, fascinated by external things, by ideas, concepts. So he brings in the Buddha's core mindfulness teachings, the 4 foundations, and he highlights something often overlooked. Simple awareness of the body's posture. Just knowing how you're sitting or standing.
Starting simple, grounding in the body.
Exactly. And from there, he moves to breath meditation. He presents it as a very direct path for anyone serious about going beyond suffering.
And the instruction.
It's beautifully simple. Have faith, commit to the practice, and just no one in-breath, no one out-breath. Gently, consistently.
Just that. Know the breath.
Just that. He acknowledges, of course, that thoughts will come, sleepiness might arise.
Oh, yeah. The classic meditation challenges.
Right. But the key is persistent effort without impatience. Gently bringing the mind back. Again and again.
Letting go of the frustration, too.
Absolutely. There's real value, he says, in just knowing that unwholesome states will arise and knowing they will also cease. That understanding itself is freeing.
Just knowing it's temporary.
Yes. And for those with some background in practice, he talks about how breath meditation can lead to deep concentration states, the jhanas.
Deeper states. Okay. What's that like?
He describes the breath becoming very fine, subtle, maybe even seeming to disappear, longer spaces between breaths. The mind turns inwards, experiences of rapture, tranquility.
Sounds quite pleasant.
It is. He mentions sometimes a perception of light arises. The instruction is just to stay with the peacefulness, not get carried away by phenomena.
Don't get attached to the pleasant states either.
Precisely. And the real fruit comes after these deep states. When the mind is clear and sharp,
What do you do then?
you use that clarity to observe, to see feelings, even the pleasant ones associated with the breath, just arising, staying, ceasing, impermanent. Not me, not mine. That's where deep insight comes from.
Ah, using the concentrated mind for wisdom.
Exactly. He says the repetition, the consistent practice yields wonderful results. A heaven-like state here and now, he calls it.
Wow. And it trains us like a muscle.
Yeah, he uses that analogy for cultivating compassion and loving kindness, too. Training the mind so we can choose skillful responses instead of just reacting automatically.
Choosing kindness over irritation.
Basically, yes. Seeing others, even difficult people, with more understanding.
Yeah.
Wishing them well without getting entangled in their negativity.
Okay, that leads nicely into the next area, doesn't it? A more complete practice involving those heart qualities.
Yes, exactly. A complete practice of mindfulness with the cultivation of the 4 Brahma-viharas as a support.
Loving kindness, compassion. What are the other 2?
Appreciative joy, feeling happy for others' good fortune, and equanimity, that stable balance.
Right. So how does he weave these in?
He starts by grounding it in ethics. The 5 precepts again. Not killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, wrong speech, intoxicants.
The basics.
Yeah, but thinking about their relevance now, like how prevalent alcohol is in some cultures, or even excessive screen time. Is that an intoxicant?
Interesting question. Does it dull the mind? Distract us?
That's his point. Intoxication isn't just substances. It's anything that makes the mind lost or distracted. He urges discernment with entertainment, news. How much do we really need?
Food for thought there. What about taking refuge?
He sees taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma teachings, the Sangha community, as resetting our intention, acknowledging there is a path beyond suffering shown by the Buddha.
A conscious commitment.
Yes, and then actively recognizing and cultivating those wholesome qualities, the Brahma-viharas. It's like holding up a mirror to the mind, seeing what's there and choosing to grow the good stuff.
Choosing the wholesome.
He observes how much cynicism and suspicion there is in modern culture, and how we lack a kind of societal manual for happiness and mental well-being, unlike, say, the DSM for mental disorders.
That's a fair point.
So he guides the practice. Start with loving kindness, metta, towards yourself. Crucial first step.
Toward yourself first.
Absolutely. And gradually extend it outwards to loved ones, neutral people, and eventually even difficult people. Being mindful of the near enemy, which for metta is selfish affection.
Avoiding attachment disguised as love.
Exactly. Then compassion. Feeling another's suffering without getting overwhelmed or falling into pity.
How is it different from pity?
Pity can have a sense of, oh, poor you, glad it's not me. Compassion recognizes our shared vulnerability to suffering as long as we're not liberated. It's a sense of shared humanity.
Shared vulnerability. I like that.
And that's where equanimity comes in. It balances the loving kindness and ensures compassion is compassion, not pity. It stops us getting totally overwhelmed by all the suffering in the world.
So equanimity prevents burnout, like compassion fatigue.
Precisely. He mentions compassion fatigue often stems from insufficient mental stability, insufficient samadhi. Hence the need for self-care, especially for those working directly with suffering.
Makes sense. And this ethical training, keeping precepts.
It leads to virtue, he says, an inner sense of goodness, of worth, and alongside this, faith is vital.
Faith again.
Faith in the ultimate truth, our own potential and the path itself. Generosity, ethics, meditation. This faith fuels the whole process.
And wisdom arises from?
From seeing impermanence, noticing arising and ceasing, detaching from thoughts and feelings as not self.
Seeing them come and go.
Right. And with diligent practice, these insights deepen. He describes moments where the sense of self can just drop away. The mind becomes radiant, experiencing the body without identifying as the body.
Wow, that sounds profound.
It is. And he talks about noble wealth, Aryasap. Not money or possessions, but inner wealth. Mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. The only wealth that lasts beyond death.
Inner wealth. That's a powerful concept. Okay, so how do we actively use these principles, those 5 spiritual powers, for instance?
Right, experiencing and applying them. He reiterates, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, cultivated fully, they lead to nibbana.
To liberation.
Yes, but they need to be developed to a certain level.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to hear the teachings. The mind needs to be ready, fertile ground, for enlightenment to spark.
The inner conditions need to be right.
Exactly. Now, contemplating not self, this needs care. He stresses approaching it with metta, with kindness,
How so? Why kindness?
because the tendency can be to see the self as an enemy to be destroyed. But he says, no, treat it more like an illness. You don't hate an illness. You treat it with compassion and patience.
Ah, a gentler approach.
Much gentler. Channel energy into skillful practices that weaken the grip of the self-view, rather than attacking it head-on. Even enlightened masters still have personalities, conventionally speaking.
Right, they still function in the world.
Of course. But they know it's not the ultimate truth. Liberation is realizing the unconditioned, the awareness beyond conditions.
The awareness itself.
He shares an interesting anecdote here about feeling an urge to leave a place in Ladakh, Lake Samori, just before a big mudslide hit.
Really?
Yeah. He wondered if it was maybe, devas, benevolent beings offering protection because of his metta practice, a reminder of interconnectedness.
Fascinating possibility.
He then circles back to the Buddha's first sermon, the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and emphasizes viraga, dispassion.
Dispassion. Sounds a bit cold.
Not cold, more like non-addiction, letting go of compulsive craving for worldly things. This allows the mind to settle, become peaceful, content. It lessens the burden of delusion, restrains greed and anger.
Ah, letting go of the compulsion. That makes more sense.
And this can lead to nibbida, remember that word, weariness, disillusionment.
Yeah, the one that leads to bliss, surprisingly.
Exactly. It's a spiritual emotion. It arises from seeing conditioned things for what they are, ultimately unsatisfactory. And this weariness turns the mind inwards, seeking release, letting go of attachment. That leads to peace.
Seeing through the hype, basically.
Yeah. Okay, so then he gets more specific. Contemplating not self with firm resolve. He unpacks the Anattalakkhana Sutta, the second discourse.
What's the core message there?
The Buddha points out form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. These 5 aggregates are not self, because we can't ultimately control them. If they were truly us, we could just say, be happy, and they would be.
Right, but we can't.
We can't. Yet the unenlightened mind constantly grasps at them as me or mine. He mentions the burning ghats in Varanasi again, that visceral reminder of impermanence and death.
A reality check.
Definitely. And even heavenly beings, the devas, they aren't permanent either. All conditioned states arise and cease. There's no lasting refuge there.
Nowhere permanent to stand in the conditioned world.
Exactly. Clear seeing arises when we stop feeding ignorance, when we cultivate mindfulness. He notes the first 5 disciples got liberated quickly because their spiritual faculties were already strong. Less dust in their eyes, as the saying goes.
I'm ready.
They were ready. He connects this to the fire sermon, too, how we habitually interpret everything through the lens of self, even though we lack control. Seeing this misidentification as suffering, dukkha, fuels that weariness, nibbida.
The weariness that turns the mind inward.
Yes, seeking respite from the burning. He acknowledges the pleasure of birth, sensual experiences, but reminds us of the inevitable suffering of aging, illness, death that comes with them.
The whole package deal.
Insight into not-self deepens as mindfulness and wisdom grow, leading to abandoning passions and delusion enlightenment.
It's a gradual deepening.
Very gradual. He mentions Ajahn Anand's advice. Contemplate the certainty of death, but the uncertainty of when to weaken clinging. Contemplate the body as just elements: earth, water, fire, air.
Breaking it down.
Yes, and he advises training to see the body's impermanence and not self-nature first before tackling mind states, because our identification with the body is usually strongest.
Start with the physical.
Makes sense, doesn't it? The liberation of those first disciples is proof of our potential too. He brings in the Ovada Padamokha, key ethical guidelines, emphasizing patient endurance as the highest practice.
Patient endurance, how does that work?
It burns out defilements. Enduring craving without acting on it weakens its power over time.
Starving the habit.
Exactly. He defines nibbana again. Supreme, not self, not a god, an unshakable peace reached through right effort, realized individually by the wise, deathless. And he stresses taking time out for practice, avoiding constant busyness and company.
Making space for it. Okay, so let's revisit that weariness leading to great bliss. How does that transition happen?
It's that nibbida again, arising from truthfully seeing the aggregates as impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self. That very seeing leads towards liberation, just like it did for the first disciples.
So the weariness isn't depression, it's clarity.
It's a clear seeing disillusionment, getting tired of the endless cycle of seeking happiness in the next thing, the next experience, only for it to fade.
The hamster wheel.
Right. That weariness, even boredom, can be sobering. It can actually push you to meditate, to turn inward. And when you experience the cessation of painful emotions through practice, that's serenity. That's real peace emerging to the disillusionment.
Ah, the peace comes after seeing through the illusion.
Exactly. He points to the Buddha's own enlightenment, profound letting go of all attachment. He clarifies that happiness, conventional happiness, is often a byproduct of good conduct, generosity, meditation. Less suffering naturally means more well-being.
So happiness isn't the direct goal, but a result.
Often, yes. And he notes, interestingly, that as you practice, you might become more sensitive to suffering initially. It's part of the process.
More sensitive. What?
As the mind gets clearer, you see things more sharply, including suffering. But Ajahn Chah's wisdom applies. Suffering arises from wrong thinking. Right view, seeing impermanence, not self, leads to acceptance and ultimately deep peace.
Right view changes everything.
It does. He also mentions the simple happiness found in taking refuge, in recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, joy from having no remorse because you're keeping precepts, the pleasure of concentration and insight itself, many kinds of wholesome happiness.
Many layers of well-being. Okay, let's shift focus specifically to compassion now. He dedicated whole talks to it.
Yes, compassion, the attitude, quality, practice, and power. He defines it clearly. Awareness and sensitivity to suffering in self and others with a sincere wish for it to end. Genuine caring.
Genuine caring. Simple but powerful.
And it's a heart quality that can become a habitual attitude through practice. A powerful force for transformation, a pure form of samadhi, concentration, that cuts through selfishness and indifference.
So compassion itself is a meditative state.
It can be cultivated into one, yes. Profound compassion for all beings, he says, transforms the mind towards a saint-like perception and response.
Saint-like. Wow.
And like metta, compassion cultivated samadhi provides a stable base for insight into impermanence and not self. It's all interconnected.
Wisdom and compassion supporting each other again.
Always. He notes the Buddha's path leads towards peace, superior even to heavenly happiness, and metta and compassion are crucial supports on that journey. Cultivating broad compassion can feel daunting, though.
Why daunting?
Because it involves a commitment to lessening others' suffering, which can feel less safe, perhaps, than just wishing them well with metta.
A bigger responsibility.
Maybe it feels that way initially. He stresses practicing all four Brahmaviharas. Together they weaken negativity, stabilize the mind, deepen samadhi, all essential for liberating insight. And true compassion starts with yourself.
And compassion for yourself motivates you.
Yes, motivates effective action, supported by loving kindness for yourself. He observes the decline in basic decency sometimes, especially online.
Tell me about it.
And says these Brahmavihara practices are vital restraints, keeping our minds from slipping into really unskillful, even subhuman states.
A necessary antidote.
He uses Mara, the tempter figure, as a warning. Past merit can lead to high status, but acting badly leads downwards. Heedfulness, mindfulness, is the path to the deathless.
Heedfulness. Paying attention.
He also explains why cosmology divas, heavens, appears in the texts. It connects these divine abidings, the Brahmaviharas, and belief in karma and rebirth can actually help cultivate compassion, especially for difficult people.
How does that help?
It provides a framework for understanding why someone might be suffering or acting badly based on past actions, which can prevent us from falling into judgment or hatred ourselves. He shares personally how decades of practice have increased his own metta and compassion, resulting in less suffering for himself.
It's a path with tangible results over time.
Definitely. Then he goes even deeper, cultivating deep, vast, and boundless compassion.
Boundless. Okay.
He identifies the near enemy of compassion as pity and the far enemy as cruelty. True compassion melts boundaries, feels with those who suffer.
Melts boundaries. I like that.
Humility is key here. Recognizing our own potential for messing up as long as we still have defilements, kalesis.
Being humble.
He shares trying to connect with service staff, asking about their lives, remembering being unseen himself, or giving to rude beggars.
Why give to rude beggars?
As training, to make giving less conditional, responding to the need, not the behavior. Generosity to all protects us from falling into negativity. He mentions a documentary on prison reform using empathy training, showing the potential for good in everyone.
Empathy training in prisons. That's hopeful.
Isn't it? He says firm conviction in Nibbana inspires spiritual boldness to fight delusion. Shares the story of Yasa, who attained insight quickly despite not being an extreme ascetic.
Showing it's possible for different types of people.
Right. Meditating on the end of suffering with strong conviction gives courage. Then the practice. Expand compassion systematically. Easy people, neutral, difficult, then all beings without discrimination.
Step by step.
Wishing liberation through Dhamma for all, especially the difficult ones. Understanding that even perpetrators suffer from their own negative mind states.
Seeing the suffering on both sides.
Yes. This broader compassion prevents things like self-righteous anger, weakening aversion. Humility from the Mangala Sutta softens the heart by questioning me and mine. Compassion transforms the mind, weakens attachments, produces merit, builds the foundation for insight. It's incredibly powerful.
It really sounds like a cornerstone practice. What about when things are really tough personally, like heartbreak?
Ah, yes. He has a specific contemplation for that. Practicing with a broken heart. Acknowledging vulnerability is just part of being human, having a body and mind.
We all experience it at some point.
We do. Difficult relationships, kids' actions, betrayal, self-disappointment. The sources are many. The key is seeing the pain as an emotion. It arises, stays, ceases. Make time to feel it. Be aware, without judging yourself for feeling it.
Allow the feeling.
Yes. He uses the analogy of ocean waves. Sometimes they're huge, like a tsunami.
Yeah.
But even tsunamis recede. Offer yourself the love you might feel you lost. Meditate with the heartbreak, the grief, offering it acceptance.
Loving the pain itself.
Offering love to the experience of pain, using the breath to ventilate it, cool the suffering, noticing when it changes, when it lessens, knowing with wisdom that even overwhelming pain won't last forever.
Trusting impermanence even with strong emotion.
Exactly. Giving yourself loving acceptance, wishing yourself well. He shares the beautiful idea. The heart that breaks can hold the whole world. It can lead to greater compassion for others.
Turning pain into empathy.
Yes. Learning to care for yourself better. Finding inner refuge through the experience, acknowledging it's common, but tending to your specific instance with great care. Trusting feelings will change. Be your own loving mother, wise teacher, tender partner in meditation.
That's incredibly kind advice. Wow. Okay, finally, he talks about effort, but nurtured with love.
Yes. Heroic effort nurtured with love. He shares his own story, vowing to sit 3,000 hours at the Bodhi tree.
3,000 hours. That's heroic.
It is. He describes himself as a faith type, deeply moved by the place, the feeling of nibbana there. He even sought help from devas when building his monastery.
Belief in benevolent forces.
Yes. He completed the first 1,000 hours as an offering, meditating amidst the noise and chaos of Bodh Gaya, requiring real faith and persistence.
Must have been challenging.
Immensely. Then in a moment of bliss, he made a foolish aspiration, as he calls it, to sit 2,000 more hours.
Doubling down.
Yeah, gradually increasing sitting time, fighting resistance, discomfort, using Bodh Gaya's energy to boost those 5 spiritual powers. But he warns about impatience infecting practice.
Impatience is common, especially now.
Very. He says modern people particularly need metta for themselves to counter self-judgment. Practicing metta in Bodh Gaya was essential for him, accepting the distractions. Compassion for one's own suffering is the motivation for practice, for ethics.
Kindness towards your own struggle.
Yes. He saw monks disrobe, thinking they weren't getting results, then regretting it later. Patience and long-term commitment are vital. Cultivating the Brahma Viharas helps sustain practice enormously.
So love and compassion fuel the effort.
They do. And
Okay.
faith. Faith in the Buddha, the path, teachers, your own ability. Remember, the Buddha started as an ordinary being. Be willing to be patient. Challenge expectations of quick results. Surrender to the training. Small insights build over time, maybe vast amounts of time.
Like the Buddha's own journey over eons.
Exactly. Faith and effort, too. No one else can do it for you. The Eightfold Path creates the conditions to go beyond karma. He shares his own journey, not being impressive early on, but building effort through faith, courage, determination.
Inspiring persistence.
He reads journal entries from a 45-day retreat there, reaching 99% of his 3,000-hour goal, pushing his limits.
Yeah.
Experiencing deep peace, temporary freedom, profound gratitude, vast metta, and equanimity. His message. Think longer term. Decades, lifetimes, not just months or years.
A very different perspective on time and progress. Wow. Okay, one last section you mentioned.
Just briefly, mindfulness-based delusion reduction. He tells an amazing story of a young-looking monk who remembers his past life
Whoa.
and maintains constant mindfulness, experiencing jhana return easily and minimal suffering, all through consistent awareness and wise reflection, not grasping.
Mindfulness reducing delusion directly.
Yes, understanding the conditioned nature of thoughts, feelings arising, ceasing. The chapter encourages generosity, relinquishment, precepts, and directing cravings skillfully towards wholesome goals, chanda, aspiring to realize what the Buddha realized.
Using desire for the path itself.
Exactly. Training oneself to love the Buddha, the path, noble beings, and all beings impartially with pure metta. This leads to greater happiness, a kinder way of being.
A beautiful aspiration. Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways.
Well, it's clear the path to realization isn't passive. It requires consistent meditation, ethical living, actively cultivating those heart qualities like metta and compassion, developing the spiritual powers, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, and gaining wisdom through seeing impermanence and not self.
And surprisingly, even weariness, that nibbida, can be a powerful catalyst for peace.
Absolutely. It's a journey of inner work, a gradual unfolding of potential, as Ajahn Suchalo really emphasizes. It's deeply personal.
So we hope that for you, the listener, reflecting on these ideas might spark something in your own journey. The book, The Process of Realization, certainly offers a lot to chew on.
It really does. A rich foundation.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Consider the power of patiently enduring whatever difficulties or discomforts you're facing right now. Could they, perhaps, be seen not just as obstacles, but as actual stepping stones towards deeper peace and understanding? Much like that weariness preceded great bliss for the Buddha's first disciples. Something to ponder.